Hello, everyone. Pam Jacobson here, your host of Three Things You Need to Know. Welcome. Welcome to anyone new that's joining us for the first time. For those of you who don't know me, I have a very long career in health and wellness. I've been in the wellness side, the prevention side of health for the last 20 years. But prior to that, I was an oncology nurse in conventional medicine. Had some of my own health issues, led me down a different path as far as thinking about health, and went back to school. I'm master's trained in Chinese medicine. I am now board certified in functional medicine. I work with clients all over the country, helping them to restore normal body function so that they can have the health and vitality that we all deserve as we age in this life. And I can work with you. I put all of my contact information in the chat area, and anything I talk about on this show, supplements, treatments, I can help you get access to that. So please don't be afraid to reach out. I love your comments, your questions. If you're watching live, please engage in the chat area if you have questions. If you're watching this back as a recording, you can reach me at the level 10 email address. You can reach me on my website. You can call, and I'm happy to answer questions. There's no obligation to work with me. If you just have a question or there's a subject you want to know more about, I'm here every Wednesday at 9 a.m. So let's get started. So this week's Three Things You Need to Know is inspired by time that I've spent with friends over the last couple days. So you may notice that I look a little bit what I would think of as unplugged today. I've got my hat on, got my workout stuff on. It's my birthday tomorrow, and I am with a group of friends, and I'm headed to the mountains to do hiking, go hiking and spend some time out in nature, celebrating my birthday for the next few days. And we've had some lively debates and conversations over the last couple of days about the proper way to prepare. Right now, we're staged at my brother-in-law's in Central California, and it's been over 100 degrees. In fact, the first day we got here it was 110. So it's very hot. We're not going that far away from here. So in the foothills where we will start out, it's going to be around that temperature in the low hundreds. And we'll, progress up the mountain, and it'll get cooler as it gets higher, but we're going to be in some hot weather. So there's been a lot of lively discussion about how does one prepare for big activity in hot weather. And, we're all in varying degrees of health and fitness. And so I thought it was a very interesting topic, and I'm sure a conversation that probably, or at least a thought that comes up for a lot of you out there, because it's summer and most of us are choosing things outdoors these days and places that we can drive to, and it's hot in most parts of the country. So I wanted to talk about a few things to consider if you're going to be doing your vacations or staycations, and you're going to be driving someplace or maybe out in the natural environment and exposed to heat, and what are some of the things that you need to do. So the first topic today is electrolytes, and I wanted to talk about what that is because it's probably something many of you don't have a lot of information about, but super important when we're dealing with activity in the heat. So electrolytes, last week I talked about magnesium, which is a mineral, and it's one of the list of electrolytes. Electrolytes are minerals, and they are really responsible for, they're kind of your body's electricity management system, if you will, right? There are some that are positively charged or negatively charged. They work together to maintain fluid balance in the body, to maintain the integrity of the cell wall, and to really basically create electric current. The nervous system gives the command, if you will, and the electrolytes help to conduct electricity through the body, to assist and really kick off many body functions like smooth rhythm of the heart and brain function. And as I mentioned before, fluid balance, digestion, they're involved in many aspects of normal body function. So they're super critical, but they also can, become depleted, especially when we're active in very hot weather. So I want to talk a little bit about the three of the key electrolytes, even though there's a whole list of them. I'm going to talk about three key ones, the first of which is chloride. So it's something most of us, don't really hear about. And again, we don't get this education in school. And so I think it's important, at least my soapbox or my goal is to educate people on things that they can do to help with their wellness, prevent disease, and in this case, prevent potential injury, or at the very least, mucking up your fun trip with your friends. So chloride is a negatively charged electrolyte or a negatively charged mineral. It's on the outside of cells, and it maintains the proper electric charge on the outside of the body cell. So I talked about, electrolytes are responsible for maintaining cell wall integrity. You've got some on the inside and you've got some on the outside, and they have different charges, positive, negative, to kind of maintain structure. So chloride is negative, it's on the outside of your cells, and its primary function is maintaining pH balance, maintaining fluid balance in general in the body, but it has a very important role in your digestion. It is part of your stomach acid. And without chloride, you would not have effective stomach acid production, and therefore you would not be able to digest and absorb the nutrients from the foods that you eat, the supplements that you're taking, the medications that you're using, whatever it is that we're wanting to digest into and then absorb through the wall of the small intestine into the bloodstream really needs the assistance of chloride. So chloride is super important for digestive system, but it's also very important for fluid balance in the body, which is something that can be affected in the summer heat. And it's also very important for this idea of electrical current in the body. The body is a very electric system, and it's actually quite measurable. We can measure how many ohms we're putting out. For those of you who've physically come to my office in Southern California to have acupuncture done, I measure that electricity every time you come in, and it gives me information on where to place my needle. So very, very interesting, the body, its electric capacity, if you will. And these electrolytes are a big part of that. So chloride is super important. What we find with electrolytes is that generally, most of us will not have an issue with electrolyte balance because we can easily get it from our diet. Some of the reasons why we might be deficient would be if we've been ill, vomiting, diarrhea, if you have digestive diseases like Crohn's or IBS, or poor digestive function and you can't absorb the minerals. That can make you deficient in electrolytes. If you are an athlete, or like me, over the next few days, I'm going to be hiking and it's hot. So there's a higher chance that there could be electrolyte imbalances from sweating or being in very hot weather. So super important, electrolytes and the maintenance. Chloride can be readily found in things like celery, lettuce, tomatoes, and olives is the other big chloride containing. You'll see that most of the foods are going to be fruits and vegetables that are readily abundant in your electrolytes, but olives come up on lists for most of these things. They're very high in sodium as well, which is the next thing I'm going to talk about. So electrolyte number one, most important, is chloride. Number two is sodium. And sodium actually has a pretty strong dependency on the balance also of chloride. And then the third electrolyte I'll talk about, potassium. So chloride, sodium, potassium, they all work together. Sodium is very dependent on the other two in order to do its job. Sodium is positively charged, unlike chloride, and it is on the outside of the cell. And its job, sodium's probably most important function in the human body is blood pressure control. And in the American diet, sodium is not something that we have trouble getting. In fact, most of us are consuming way too much sodium, which is why many people who are diagnosed with high blood pressure are told to go on a low sodium diet, because it helps to control and maintain blood pressure. So if we're getting too much, it only stands to reason that we would have high blood pressure. So you do have to be careful about your sodium balance. About 2,400 milligrams a day is about the maximum. Most of us are getting maybe even as much as double that, depending on what we're doing in our diet. Aside from blood pressure, sodium also manages our muscular function, regulates that function, regulates nerve function in the body. And you will readily find sodium, obviously, in table salt. That's the most abundant form of sodium. Green olives, again, there's olives. Anything that comes from the sea, like seaweed, kelp, very high in sodium. Cheese, a lot of the cheese is very, very high in sodium. And then sauerkraut. which is a fermented food. So those are some of your very, very high sodium foods. Obviously, there's sodium in many, many foods, but I wanted to point out some of the highest, again, things that we just don't even think about, right? You go to a buffet, there's a bunch of olives there, we eat a whole bunch. You've just probably eaten as much sodium as you should have in a whole day in 5 minutes at the buffet. So very important, critical electrolyte, but one that most of us are either very abundant or overly abundant in, unless you are experiencing some of the things I mentioned before, right? If you're ill or there's certain medications, also diuretics, where somebody's going to the bathroom a lot, you can find deficiencies in these electrolytes when that's happening. Potassium is the third one I wanted to talk about today. It's a positively charged ion. It's inside the cell. And it's one of its primary responsibilities is that it regulates the rhythm and the beating of the heart. So you'll find that when you, let's say that you end up in the emergency room with a concern that you might be having a heart attack or some kind of an issue with your heart, they'll always be looking at your electrolytes, particularly your potassium, because it is very much involved in the regulation of the heartbeat, but it also keeps the cells together like the others do and regulates fluid balance as well. Some of the foods that are rich in potassium are your nuts, things like almonds and pecans and Brazil nuts, raisins, very high in potassium. And so if you add those things together, what do you have? Trail mix, right? So when we're going hiking, one of the things that's very common to take is trail mix for that reason. It's got lots of potassium in it. It's a great replacement for electrolyte loss. But avocados are very high. Avocados and nuts and raisins are much higher in potassium than bananas. Bananas tends to be the food most people think of, like I eat a banana a day so I can get my potassium. Well, bananas don't actually have as much potassium as you think. Raisins and avocados and nuts have much, much more, almost double the amount of potassium. Parsley, sunflower seeds are very high in potassium. But bananas are a good fallback as well. I think my concern always with a lot of bananas is the sugar and the carbohydrates involved in that. So there you have it. Those are three out of a list. There's more. Phosphorus and magnesium are both. Bicarbonate is also an electrolyte. But the three that we concern ourselves with the most when we're looking at summer fun activities, such as hiking out in the heat, is potassium and sodium and chloride. Now, as I said before, we tend to get everything that we need from our diets. I have a question, and I am going to get to that question, Trevor. Actually, he's asking my opinion on electrolyte drinks versus supplements. It seems like everyone uses drinks, but are they the best? Which really, it's a great segue. Thank you, Trevor. It leads me right into the whole reason that this became my topic today is because I'm here in Central California with my friends. It's my birthday tomorrow, and we are going hiking in the Sierra Mountains, which are not too far from here. And as I said before, it's been in the hundreds here, and it's going to be in the hundreds there on all the days that we begin our hikes, even though the temperature will drop as we get to the higher elevation. And so we need to be concerned. And so we're staging here, meaning we've been here for a couple days. We're shopping and preparing. And so we were at the store yesterday, and there were three of us doing the shopping. And one of us got a couple of bottles of Gatorade off of the shelf and put it into the cart. And, I'm not the food police, right? I mean, I'm on vacation. I tend to try to take off my work hat, and everybody can do their thing. It's not my business. So I didn't say anything. But this happened to be the same store I was at when I told you guys the story a few weeks ago about the margarita mix, right? Where I discovered that all margarita mixes are not made equal. And in fact, the majority of them are really bad for you. And that you need to look at your labels on everything, including your sports drinks, right? Including that. So I was telling them, because we happen to be by the margarita section. I swear I don't drink that many margaritas, but anyway. And I was telling them the story because I showed them the bottle of the margarita mix that I ended up buying. And the woman who had put the Gatorade in the cart, she said, well, what about because I was talking about the yellow dye that's in the margarita mix. And of course, it looks just like the Gatorade bottle. And she said, well, what about this? And I said, well, honestly, that's probably like the worst thing that you could use for electrolyte replacement. Now, here's the deal. Does it replace electrolytes? Yeah, it does. It's got sodium and things in it that can help the electrolyte balance. But here's the issue: the offset for that, the yellow dye, the sugars, the other chemicals that are in there are probably much more worse for you than the electrolyte imbalance that you might have had that you were using to replace that with. So we had a lively conversation, which actually ended up with her putting it back on the shelf. And so, Trevor, the answer to the question is, for me personally, I do not generally purchase electrolyte replacement drinks or sports drinks for that reason. The majority of them, if you look at the labels, they've just got really just terrible things. They're full of sugar. They're that color because of the dye they put in it. The flavors are artificial flavors. And so it's very tricky to use bottled sports drinks for electrolyte replacement that's healthy for you. Now, that's not to say that there aren't some out there. I have not done exhaustive research on that, because there are electrolyte balancing supplements that I can get from my nutraceutical suppliers like Orthomolecular and so forth. So they're powders, generally speaking, super easy to use. You just dump them in the water. And if I'm on a really big hike, several years ago, I hiked 50 miles in Machu Picchu, and we did need electrolyte replacement. There we were at high altitudes. The weather wasn't hot, but it was a lot of strenuous activity every day. And I got bad headaches while I was there in the altitude, and I needed some electrolyte replacement. Now, like I said before, generally speaking, we get enough electrolytes from our food supply, from our diet. Most of us aren't deficient, but there are situations where we may experience some deficiency, and that can be in heavy activity outdoors, especially if it's hot and it's summer, right? And most of us are doing the types of trips where we might be driving someplace where we're spending time outside in the heat. And so for my second topic today, I really wanted to talk about what you can do to prep and plan for that in a healthy way. So I think it starts with, leading up to your decision, your trip. In my case, it's going to be a hiking trip for a few days. Taking the best care of myself that I could, getting enough rest, hydrating well, and eating good hydrating food. So really, when I think about preparation for strenuous outdoor activity and heat, I think about two things. I think about hydration, liquid, and I think about food hydration, right? So you can get hydration from both your foods as well as the liquids that you're drinking. Citrus fruits, for instance, celery is very high in water content. Coconut water, if you feel like you need an electrolyte drink or fluid, coconut water is a great electrolyte replacement. Carrots, pineapple. So think about anything that's really juicy is a very good hydrating food that you can add to your diet. Certainly things that you can also take on the trip with you when you're out there. I generally, I carry a pack that has a water bladder in it, about a 3-liter water bladder, and I usually fill that with ice so that I can slip things down between that bladder and the side of the backpack and keep it cool, right? So I'll put different kinds of fruits in bags, and of course take my trail mix and my like high potassium. But then I also always have some electrolyte powder with me that I can dump into the water that will quickly replace electrolytes. So that's important if you find yourself in a tough situation and you're starting to not feel well. For me, electrolyte imbalance almost immediately results in a pretty bad headache. But there's other symptoms: being dizzy, weak, fatigued, feeling nauseous, feeling a bit faint, profusely sweating, are a lot of other types of symptoms that you might have if you are becoming imbalanced in electrolyte. So having some type of electrolyte replacement, I generally just always have something with me if I'm out. I don't necessarily use it unless I feel like I need it. But if I've prepared well and I've taken care of myself those couple of days before, and I've taken lots of good electrolyte-rich snacks with me on the trip, I shouldn't have really a problem with that. So hydration, how much do you need? When I was on my trip in Machu Picchu and I got my really severe headache, we had this great medic that was with us on that trip. And he said, well, Pam, here's the deal. When you're in altitude or you're really in heavy levels of exercise, you actually almost have to double your hydration. And I didn't realize that. I was really just sticking with my probably about 3 liters of water. And at that elevation, he said I needed more like a gallon or more, which is a lot of fluid. And especially when you're hiking and there's not a bathroom handy, right? you tend to want to restrict your fluid so you don't have to pee every 5 minutes, but it's not a good idea. So you just kind of have to grin and bear it and, go find a good bush. But the bottom line is that hydration is really critical to keep your electrolytes balanced. But remember that electrolytes aren't necessarily inherent in the water. So you need to either add them or make sure that you're eating, fruits and nuts and things like that to give you the electrolytes you need. So really great. Have summer fun, be active, but be aware that this is something that's really important, your preparation ahead of time, and then looking at your labels, right? Just because something says it's electrolyte replacement doesn't mean that all of the components of that are necessarily going to be healthy. And I'm here to tell you things like Gatorade and Powerade and a lot of these sports drinks are, multi-million-dollar corporations that really have very little concern for whether or not it's something healthy that you're putting in your body. It does meet the objective of helping to replace electrolytes, but it is not ultimately done in a healthy way. And if it's something that you're using on a very regular basis, that could be problematic. Anyway, so there you are with summer fun and electrolytes and hydration. I hope you found that helpful. And it leads me to my third point today, which is I told you that I'm doing a series on resilience, right? So I had started out with an update every week on the coronavirus, and essentially now what I've arrived at is it's here. It's not going anywhere. It may be, depending on what news outlet you're watching and who's skewing what numbers in what way, it may look like it's better in some places and it's going down, but no, it's going up. It's very confusing. The bottom line is, just like every other flu virus, it's here. It's not going to be going away anytime soon. It does appear to be a much worse and much more unpredictable type of flu virus than we've ever encountered. It's hard to know if you will be the person who has trouble with it because it does not seem to be absolutely dependent on a person's health baseline. So we've seen very healthy people get very sick. And so I think, again, as I've said in past weeks, it becomes incumbent on you, right? It's all of our responsibility to do everything we can to be resilient, to be as healthy and as strong as we possibly can be so that we can either resist the virus, or should we actually encounter the virus in our bodies, that we are able to get over it quickly and not suffer some of the severe consequences that some have. So I'm going to talk for the next several weeks, each week, on a point about resilience and what you can do to increase your resilience. And a lot of this is information that I've talked about before because it plays right into the Health Foundation, which is something that I really pretty much have built my entire practice on, is helping individuals rebuild their health foundation. But it's information that we probably need to hear in several different ways before we really get it. So last week was week number 1, and I talked about sleep, right? So in order of importance, sleep really is number 1. And the reason is because if you don't sleep enough time and deeply and restfully enough, you're not repairing the body. And if you're not repairing the body, none of the other things that you do are really going to matter all that much, because you're not going to affect the repair on the body systems that restore function and restore health and vitality. So sleep is really critical. I can't impress upon you enough the importance of that. And my challenge to all of you last week was, for this next week, set yourself up to be getting 8 hours of restful sleep. So first of all, you have to prep and plan for that, right? So make sure you go to bed so that you've got 8 hours in bed. But more importantly, make sure that you prepare your body for that sleep so that it's deep and restful. And that requires some wind down time. And I gave you some information on what to do. This week, we're going to talk about the importance of what I call stress response management. And I've talked about this frequently, so I won't go into extreme detail, but it does kind of dovetail nicely with the things I already talked about, because one of the best ways to help you manage stress response is to reconnect with the natural environment, which is exactly what I'm doing in about 2 hours from now, right? I'm going to drive to the mountains and I'm going to spend the next few days in the trees, outside in the sunshine, breathing fresh mountain air and moving my body in a natural environment. So, and that can be as simple as going out in your backyard in your bare feet and walking around out there in the grass, or driving down to the beach and taking off your shoes and walking in the sand. It doesn't have to be a 3-day trip to the mountains. You can do this usually right in your own neighborhood, maybe right even in your own backyard. So, stress response management is super critical for resilience. And I'm going to give you a visual so you understand why. There's a very specific part of our brain, the back brain, called the primitive brain. And it is what the original human brain was before everything evolved over the top of it. And we have the rest of our brain. But this primitive brain was originally what was responsible for the survival of our species, allowing us to evolve to the point that we have today. And it's still functioning exactly the same as it did hundreds, maybe thousands of years ago, in that it is a very black and white system. It's either on or it's off. When it's on, it is pumping out stress hormone that is designed to help us survive something that would be a mortal danger. So I like to use the analogy of a lion chasing us in a jungle. So if I'm in a jungle and a lion's chasing me, I really don't need anything else other than the ability to either be strong enough to fight that lion, or more likely what would happen is I would be agile and fast enough to run away from the danger, right? So fight or flight, everybody's heard of that. And that's really what that primitive nervous system is responsible for, is providing you with the resources in order for you to either fight the danger or to flee from the danger. Unfortunately, though, that system is not able to tell the difference between a lion in a jungle and, say, something like a work deadline or bad news, which we're getting like 24/7 these days, right? So it really monitors your emotions and your thoughts to understand if you are in some kind of danger. So if you're feeling anxious or fearful or sad or angry or frustrated, those are all negative emotions that are going to clue the nervous system in that you're likely to be in some form of danger. And then it goes into action and produces stress chemicals and hormones. And the reality is that most of us are in stress mode 24 hours a day. And we get very good at ignoring it and not paying attention. And so we don't even necessarily recognize it. But the body is suffering from the effects of that. And if you think about it, if you're in a jungle and a lion is chasing you 24 hours a day, it's not going to be long before the body starts to break down, right? Because the resources needed for proper digestion, proper sleep, proper hormone balance are just not there. They're not available, right? They're all being sort of hijacked and used for fight or flight response. So it's, again, your responsibility, incumbent upon you, now that you know this information, that you take the reins and control what the nervous system is doing. And the only way that you can do that is to manage your response to the stress. That's why I call it stress response management. What that means is you can't change the stress. You can't change the lion chasing you in the jungle, right? Most of the stressors we encounter on a daily basis are not something we have control over. So what can you do? You can control how you respond to the stress so that the nervous system isn't getting the signal that you're in some kind of danger. And since most of us are hardwired for this automatic response that's just ongoing, it's important then that you retrain or train yourself how to do that. So for point number 2, or part number 2 of the resilience series, I'm talking about things that you can do for stress response management. So a really easy, simple thing is to get out in nature, like every day if you can, right? Even if you're just sitting out in the sunshine for a little bit, going out and deeply breathing some fresh air, maybe getting out and putting your feet in the grass. But there's also the challenge for you this week would be to do more of that. But also something else that's very simple is meditation. And there's some great apps, guys. I mean, just super simple, easy things that you can download to your smartphone. We all have one. And that all you have to do is just turn it on and listen to what the person is saying, right? They're having you visualize while you're deep breathing. So here's the key. The way you retrain the nervous system is you use a deep breath. When you are in danger, you cannot take a deep breath. When you are not in danger, you can. So when you can take a deep breath, The nervous system then gets the signal that you are actually not in danger. So you need to use deep breathing as often as you can. And that's what meditation, yoga, some forms of biofeedback, getting out in the fresh air, just taking deep breaths, setting a reminder every hour to remind you to take a deep breath. So here's what I'd like to see you do this week for part number 2 of the Resilience series is to set yourself up with some kind of daily stress response management program. It needs to be something in the morning for about 15 minutes. So for me, I like that to be a meditation. Like I said, there's lots of apps. I use something called Insight Timer, but Calm is good, 10% Happier, Headspace. There's a million of them out there. So pick one, find something you like, go through, find a meditation, somebody's voice that you appreciate, and set that up so that you do that for 15 minutes in the morning before you start your day. This already sets your nervous system up right at the get-go to understand that you are not in danger. Okay, then set your timer to go off about every hour to remind you very simply, just take a couple of deep breaths. That's it. You don't have to stop the work that you're doing. You don't have to stop the meeting that you're in. You just hear the little reminder. You take a couple of deep breaths, again, reminding the nervous system, nope, I'm not in danger. Yes, it's a difficult meeting, but I'm not in danger. I'm fine. Don't need you. Back off. And then at the end of the day, and this could be done during your sleep preparation, right? Because we're still working on week 1, which was sleep preparation and 8 hours of sleep. You can do another sleep meditation or a little bit of restorative yoga, or maybe just a breathing technique. So for this week, I want you to really focus on dialing that into your daily routine, something in the morning, something at night, a little bit every hour throughout the day. And really in short order, within a couple of weeks, you will have gotten your nervous system really started to change its course in terms of how you manage stress in your body. So there you have it, guys. That's part 2 of the Resilience stress response management. There's lots of things that we can do for stress response management as far as supplementation, testing to see what your adrenal output looks like, your cortisol levels. But really, at the end of the day, if you're not doing a daily stress response management routine, most of that stuff's not going to be very effective. So this is where we start with resilience. It's the things that you do every day that will make that difference. Okay? So have fun, go outside, be in the heat, be active, but make sure that you're getting yourself ready for that by sleeping well, managing your stress, and eating lots of hydrating foods. And if you need to get some electrolyte powder to pack with you, especially if you're going on a big hiking trip, reach out and let me know. Otherwise, I will be here next week at 9 a.m. and I'll fill you in on all the fun that I had on my birthday hiking trip. Have a great week, everybody. Thank you for tuning in. I'll talk to you soon.